Welcome back to Thrawn's Revenge Abridged. Last time we started things off as Empire of the Hand, the Imperial spin-off faction, going out to attack our neighbouring Imperial faction, the Pentastar Alliance. We used a nice annoying Sun Tzu style strategy of attacking all of their weakly defended locations and refusing to fight when we actually encountered resistance. Therefore we took a large amount of territory that we now have completely unguarded. We're very overextended, and maybe the game will eventually punish us for that. For now, we're just getting started with a battle at Ord Tracy. We'd just taken the space above it, so I've sent my usual land crew to go and deal with things. The enemy actually bothered to attack our spawn point in this fight. It seems like they're ramping up their efforts by trying a little bit. Luckily, a flamethrower turret at the spawn point dealt with their attack. As I was moving on, I was attacked by a Dark Jedi. You can see the thing I mentioned last time about the animations being a bit crazy here. Everyone's sprinting around and shooting in fast motion. And I was so confused by this, I was like, wait a minute, have I got the game speed turned up to maximum or something by accident? But no, it seems to be on the default, and I didn't feel like changing it. So I think the mod just does increase animation speeds, and it looks a bit funny. Anyway, so we moved on, and in this battle, we had our first tinge of actual difficulty. Because we couldn't immediately rush the enemy base and just destroy things, they had time to get their infinitely respawning units going, so we did end up having something of a fight as we advanced towards the enemy base. I also forgot to bring up my big tanks at first, which made going past these bunkers more difficult. There was one thing I wanted to mention, which is that in this game, when you use attack move, it kind of toggles attack move on, so all subsequent movement orders are treated as attack moves. And it caused me some problems in this battle because my men kept running into fight and I wasn't sure why, because I was giving them orders to run away, and it's because their attack move was on, so they were actually going towards enemies. Anyway, a little bit annoying. The battle is eventually won, as you can see, because we just blow up their base from space. Probably the easiest way to win, might as well just not even bother attacking, just sit by some flame turrets to kill the infinitely spawning infantry and blow up their base eventually. Now right after that win, the enemy immediately attacked Munalinst again. Just going to auto-resolve that because we can't defend it. Now I'm going to abandon Ord Tracy because we don't need it, and we want to slightly reduce our overextension. I thought I'd sneak back to Munalinst in order to defeat that small fleet we saw there just now, but it's already gone. Looks like the enemy are starting to use my tactics against me, which is pretty good of them. A recon droid reveals that where previously we had seen their main fleet, there's now only a smaller fleet, which means we're probably not about to be attacked. So I'm going to go back and do the usual. Let's have another classic strike. This time we're attacking Anx Minor over by Ord Tracy. Nothing too difficult to deal with here. Their most powerful ship was something with a weird name, the Precursor Sator or something like that. It's a Star Destroyer that's better than the Victory class we saw a lot of in the last series, but worse than a regular Star Destroyer, so no match for our regular Star Destroyers and much more. I'm pretty sure our Chiss ships are a decent match for Star Destroyers as well. As I was going for the ground attack, I noticed that Pentastar have a fleet over Munalinst again. It's just sitting there, so we might have to go back there and deal with that. In this fight we got our second taste of difficulty because we finally came across a planet that had a vehicle factory on it, meaning we now have to face vehicles, and this ground attack crew that I haven't really been paying much attention to in terms of composition actually is very bad against vehicles because it's all light things. It's flame tanks, infantry and anti-air tanks for the most part, so against regular vehicles we struggle. All I can really do is build anti-vehicle turrets and lure the enemy onto them, and use my big MMT anti-building things to blow up vehicles as well, because they are pretty powerful, although I imagine they're also weak against vehicles since they're probably a glass cannon type of unit. Anyway, so I used anti-vehicle turrets to defend the left side of the lake we're fighting around, and sent all of my troops around to the right side. Here I realise we've got a great advantage actually over playing in vanilla. As you might have noticed there, and you'll see again here, when a walker goes through infantry, they don't die like they do in vanilla Star Wars Empire at War. Normally your infantry can be run over. Since that's not happening, our weakness against light vehicles is quite reduced, since our infantry will gradually kill the light vehicles, and the light vehicles usually aren't very good against infantry because they have only low attack values. So long story short, things were fine in the end. We captured a communications tower to reveal the map, and then just bombed their vehicle factory to make sure no more shenanigans would be on the way, and the rest of the battle was simple. So there we have it, we won with no losses, despite our lack of preparations. We will have to put an actual ground army with all of the other types of units like tanks and artillery in it together at some point, but I'm still rushing right now. This is just a very long rush strategy we're seeing for the early game, so I haven't built anything for all intents and purposes. Now I went back to Munalynst to attack the fleet we saw massing over there. It's actually got a few decent ships in it, but the real problem here is that we also had one of these ambushes where a whole load of stuff just appeared behind us in the corner. So now we need to fight in two directions. It's not so bad because if we turn the ships they can fire with both of their broadsides and perhaps get more firepower applied to enemy things. Not sure who these guys attacking us actually are, I don't recognise any of the ships. Guessing they're some sort of pirate faction or an alien faction that we haven't encountered yet. So I'm going to now attempt to turn the fleet to fire in both directions, as I said, and apart from that there's not too much we can do. I didn't want to focus fire on anything in particular because I wanted our ships to be firing in both directions if they could do it, so I'm not going to do any micro. We're just going to watch the mess and hope that nothing dies. The best thing I can do here is occasionally press Control A to bring up all of the health bars like that to see, are any of my ships actually getting killed here, because it's kind of hard to see. And it looked like some of the smaller things were taking damage. There's an interdictor in the corner of our formation that's just about lost all of its shields. One of my fleet carriers is also on the verge of death, and I'm trying to sneak it out of the battle at the top of the map there. We did have a genuine risk here of losing ships, but you can see the Pentastar, alignment, I've been calling them the Pentastar Alliance the whole time, whatever, the Pentastar guys actually retreated. They lost one of their 2 Star Destroyers, and the remaining Star Destroyer and a old clone frigate just jumped out of the fight, and that actually meant the fight ended right away. Now it did say that we lost the interdictor there, but I actually used the emergency jump thing on it, so while it wasn't there at the end of the battle, it had just jumped out and it respawns after the fight. We'll just put it back into the fleet. So ultimately we lost nothing. We didn't gain anything really in that fight either, but at least nothing went too badly. Now I thought I'd be very clever and send some fighters to attack that neutral place, just to see what was there, but the fighters wouldn't go. I thought this means you just can't fly at those planets for whatever reason, but in retrospect it might just be because I was trying to use fighters. Not all fighters in Star Wars lore are able to enter hyperspace, so perhaps you just can't send a single unit of fighters to fly somewhere like that. It has to be in a fleet. Anyway, we sighted a Pentastar fleet over Anx Minor, so I went to go and take it down. When I arrived I was like, well, where is it? And there it is, it's that speck coming towards us. They've got one tiny corvette. In this case the AI isn't going to be good in terms of knowing that it can retreat. It's going to actually go for it, so fine. I sent a few ships forwards to see if we could convince the enemy to leave. Nope, they're going to take it, they're going to take it. So, good work, that's an enemy corvette dispatched. Now, there's the warning from our AI companion that an enemy fleet is approaching. It usually doesn't tell you when an enemy fleet's approaching. So like we've been attacked several times before and it never said enemy fleet approaching. So the fact that it said it made me think that this is a big deal. The question is, where is it? Sometimes you can see enemy fleets attacking you, but in this mod, I think the line of sight that planets have is much lower than it is in the base game. You can see there's a little ring around planets. I think that's their line of sight. So for all intents and purposes, if a fleet's approaching you, you can't see it until it's half a second away from actually reaching you. So all I can do is wait. To pass the time, I spotted some more enemy ships at Munalynst. It was a somewhat substantial force. They've got 2 Star Destroyers and one of those clone things I mentioned, the Venerator Star Destroyers I think they're called. This is a good chance to take down these valuable enemy ships then. Although last time we did this, the enemy just retreated before we could finish them off. To counter that, you can see there I've got my interdictor using its gravity well ability. This disables retreating from the fight, so the enemy will be forced to fight to the death, and the hope is that they'll die and we won't. I'm actually going to start microing here, because I'm going to order the whole fleet to focus fire down the Venator. This will reduce the extent to which they're firing at the fighters and bombers around them, and not really doing anything. So there we go, there goes the Venator. One Star Destroyer went down really fast, I just focus on the other one. Once you do focus fire with the whole fleet, you can take down even massive capital ships in a few seconds. I only wasn't being so effective before because I wasn't bothering to micro. Especially because it seems like your bombers, if you attack move, your bombers might prioritize using their laser to attack fighters rather than actually bombing ships. And bombing ships is one of the fastest ways to destroy them. Or at least it was in the base game, I can't say too much about the mod. So, we get another warning about an enemy fleet approaching there, but still no sign of what it is or where it is. I'm still just continuing my Sun Tzu strategy. Moving on to attack another Pentastar location. Again, it's lightly defended. The actual fleet here was, I think it was just a corvette, and this one acclimator that came out to face us away from the stations. Not that being near the stations would have really helped in this situation. So, we're not going to micro this time, just attack move, that'll do. There goes the acclimator to a massive barrage. After the win, I thought it might as well just continue on. We can now attack the location of their previously powerful fleet that appears to have been now quite split up and is just a few ships, so it will go on and make this attack. You might remember this location is actually guarded by many of the weapons platforms, which themselves can be considered to be 1 or 2 capital ships worth of strength each. So this is probably one of the hardest setups we've fought so far, but since the enemy's main fleet isn't here, I think there is a chance for us to get through this, especially because we can exploit the fact that weapons platforms can't move, so we can focus them down one by one in theory. I wanted to move around to the bottom left of the map because the weapons platform at the bottom is a level 2 one rather than level 3, which the other two are. This is confusing. Basically, it was slightly easier in principle to attack along the bottom edge of the map. But because there were asteroids down there, I couldn't really get the right angle, and I ended up just attacking the middle of the enemy's formation, aka the worst place to attack. We did quickly destroy an Imperial Star Destroyer, so that's their one mobile weapons platform taken down. Now I'm just going to focus fire the nearest thing and try to hack our way through this. We're too close to the enemy and we're too slow to do any maneuvers and try to get a different angle for our attack. We'll just go for it. That middle platform goes down pretty quickly. We come into range of the other two platforms at the same time, but luckily they're firing at our fighters, which are swarming all over the place, so our capital ships aren't taking the brunt of it quite yet. Now I'm going to try and move downwards towards this weaker platform and take it out, hopefully getting out of range of the stronger platform to the north and staying on the left side of the screen as it is, so we're not close to where their frigates are spawning in and are broadly out of their range. That fails because as you give movement orders, your line rotates all over the place and we end up having our flank right in the worst position, getting shot by the enemy's weapons platform and by their spawning in frigates. Still, with the other weapons platform down to the south taken out, finally we can turn everything in to attack the last enemy group. We take out the shipyard, we take out the remaining ships. Then I realised I had my interdictor with its gravity well mode activated, and I thought if I turn that off the enemy might just retreat now because we've beaten them pretty badly, and indeed they do start retreating just after I give them the option to do so, which is nice because it means we don't have to bother fighting this last weapons platform. You can see one of my Star Destroyers has gotten in there. It's really enthusiastic to go after that platform, but as I said we don't need to because we're going to retreat. I happened to activate the cinematic mode just as the timer ran out, and strangely it seems that when you're in this cinematic mode, the battle doesn't end, because it only actually ends when I cancel it out, so I thought maybe there's some sort of exploit we can use there. I believe that damage done after the timers reach 0 doesn't count, so you probably can't, but there's a chance there's some way to stop the enemy from retreating or something by using the cinematic camera to do extra damage once the timer's already run out. Anyway, after that fight I was getting back into a defensive position and preparing to attack that planet, when suddenly we find out what all this enemy fleet approaching nonsense has been about. It's the Republic fleet, and you might actually have guessed that because it took so long for something to attack us after the announcement that something was going to attack us, that whatever was coming our way must have been travelling a really long way, and this Republic fleet was very far away but was just one jump away from our territory. So perhaps it was possible to deduce that we were going to receive this attack even if we couldn't see it. Anyway, as for the battle, We're not in an ideal situation. We've only got a couple of capital ships. We've got one good one and a couple of destroyers, which are sort of comparable to capital ships in general. But the New Republic fleet has quite a few capital class ships, and it's even got a couple of the really big super capitals, which we can't necessarily contend with. I found out that my weapons platform here only fires when you target things manually. It doesn't fire at will at the enemy by the looks of things. It's got 4 massive guns that do tons of damage, so it's pretty beefy, but you do have to micro it seems. The enemy split their fleet up, with some of their smaller ships coming ahead of the bigger ones. I thought maybe we could take this chance to destroy a couple of them before the big capital ships ruin our day. And then, as we can see, I didn't attempt that because I thought, no, let's just get out of here. Even their leading ships were quite good. Their, destroyer class ships are particularly powerful, it seems, the New Republic, from that 5-second analysis anyway. So our frigate station destroys itself there, and the enemy will take control of this space. We just lost a couple of frigates on our side, so our fleet's still in working order. What we can do now is move it away and combine it with the other fleet that I had guarding against that mysterious neutral area. So we'll just hope that no attacks come from that direction, and with this we can put something of a defense together in case the New Republic keep attacking us. Next, we need to do a couple of quick ground assaults, need to take the planets from the Pentastar alignment that we've just captured the space of. This first one took ages because the map was really big, but ultimately the enemy only had 1 or 2 units of stormtroopers, so there was no resistance really. Now, I wanted to go for the other one, but first we had a little engagement over at Anx Minor, where a unit that was supposed to go down to the garrison had ended up in space and the enemy attacked it. Fortunately, all we need to do is start the battle and press retreat, and our unit will escape, although we do lose the space, of course. Anyway, so now we're going to attack Bastion here, again, just defended by some stormtroopers by the looks of things. We had a nice linear map, easy to attack because you know roughly where the enemy is going to be, although we did have some trouble with more units going off on their own to make dangerous attacks, like right here where one of my heroes had got fixated with attacking a bunker on his own and I didn't even notice. He just about survived, escaping back to our territory. We'll put him next to a Bacta tank to get him back to health, and go on to kill everything else with ease. And while we were here, we discovered a building called the Pentastar Alignment Citadel Capital, something like that. And it supposedly represents the fact that this is the centre of the enemy's administration. So we've blown it up. That's probably going to annoy them in some way. I think it reduces their income. I can't quite remember what it said. Now, another battle starts. Couldn't quite remember what this was, but then I realised, it's the battle I was sort of expecting, back over with the New Republic. So they're finally making a ground attack. I put loads of tanks and stuff down there on the surface, ready to resist just such an attack. Let's see what we can do. We see they've got a whole load of light vehicles, nothing too heavy looking, so that's good news because we don't have anything particularly heavy either. We've got some medium tanks, 3 of them there, which are going to prove somewhat useful at taking down enemy light vehicles. My strategy was to rush the right and centre capture points to try and deny them before the enemy could get there and capture them themselves, since in principle, if you can stop the enemy getting their pop cap up, it'll make it very hard for them to attack. The problem was, the enemy went centre and left, and captured both of the points before we arrived, meaning they got their pop cap up and immediately started reinforcing right in front of us, so the groups of troops I sent to these locations are going to have a really hard time. I'm going to leave these infantry here to just absorb all of these rockets that are coming in while my big tank gets out of there, although the big tank did do some damage to the enemy's light vehicles, just blowing them up. Instead it'll come back here and blow up some civilian buildings for us, since the civilians are hostile on this map. The civilians were particularly annoying actually, because I've got turbo lasers installed at this base, but civilians can just go up and shoot the turbo lasers and destroy them. Since turbo lasers aren't very good against the lowest trash infantry, it's actually countering us pretty well. Anyway, so the enemy are making a big push through the centre and we are just getting annihilated. We don't have our forces concentrated properly to resist this, so mostly I'm just using my infantry as sacrifices to try and get some kills on the enemy. One advantage we have, of course, is that since we're defending, we'll get some garrison units for free, but the enemy don't have anything like that. So if we can take out enough enemy stuff that what they have left is roughly our garrison, we may still be able to defend even if we're losing these fights. Here we see a fight between vehicles where our medium vehicles don't do very well against the enemy's lighter things. I don't think they're quite as light as I thought they were. Here I saw a great chance to annihilate loads of enemy infantry by just running them down with our gigantic tank. But alas, it doesn't work, as we already mentioned. My tank just drives through them and indeed gets shot to pieces. So that didn't work. In the base game, that would have been a really devastating move for the enemy. As we can see, my turbo lasers are just being shot by the generic trash infantry, as I said, so they're really not providing much help at all. However, the regular turrets you can build are. Here we are at my last line of defense, just outside my base. The enemy are spamming their light vehicles, but we've got a anti-vehicle turret firing at them. Need to micro it a bit because it keeps trying to shoot at enemy infantry annoyingly. But it's doing the job. My infantry are absorbing enemy fire while my turret takes out their vehicles, and very quickly the enemy's force here is leveled. That's very good stuff. We've got other turrets here and there across the battlefield, and they're doing the damage. Even the anti-infantry flamethrower turrets are fine for taking down light vehicles, so that's great. All these individual vehicles that are isolated are just going to die. They won't be able to get past our turrets, and even our odd infantry units may be able to damage them. So here at our main front line, we've got the enemy locked down. Our flame turret's trying to shoot at something that's glitched into the ground. You can see it's shooting at this weird grey cylinder-like thing, and there's actually a unit stuck inside it by the looks of things, so that's what's going on there. Not much is being achieved. At least it's delaying the enemy, because both sides are kind of shooting at each other and not really doing any damage. Over here, some infantry just before they died were able to set up a turret on a captured build pad, so that's great. It's going to come in really useful, since just one turret can potentially do so much damage. And here's the perfect chance. A whole load of these enemy hover tanks come to try and attack the turret, and bang, one by one we're just wiping out these vehicles. So much value we're getting from this turret, and by now the enemy are pretty much out of vehicles. They've been losing them really fast, and they're getting down to just the last one or two, but they are also now inside our base. I had a bunker here with 2 units of infantry inside. The infantry are able to take out attacking civilians, but we don't have the range on the nearby turrets to take out the attacking vehicle. That turret outside the base just about gets a last vehicle kill there. We can see there's still plenty of enemy infantry to deal with, so we'll have to prepare for that. First, I need to get rid of this turret that's shooting at my bunker. I discovered at about this point that I can research a thing that gets rid of the rain debuff for my side, and I definitely should have done that right at the start of the fight. I just didn't remember or realise you couldn't do that. Anyway, so I eventually work out how to get my infantry outside of the bunker. We go to attack the enemy's hover tank, and the good news is that the tank keeps shooting at the bunker even after we've left it, so a nice little AI flaw there, so it's just shooting at nothing, giving us free rein to attack it. I'm going to switch target onto this one guy and kill him, since if you kill single enemies, that counts as defeating the whole unit, so now even if we lose, the New Republic will have 1 fewer infantry squads. Since more infantry were on the way, I needed to run back, and indeed it's probably more important to set up turrets here rather than to destroy that tank. So the turrets start building. Now my infantry just need to act as damage sponges to allow the turrets to complete. They succeed in this goal, and our flame turret quickly decimates the nearby enemy infantry. Then the anti-vehicle turret takes out the enemy tank before it can destroy the barracks off to the right. And that barracks, as we see here, is spawning more infantry for us, so we're not quite out of the fight yet. An enemy snow speeder attacks our base from above, but it turns out our infantry can shoot at those snow speeders and we easily destroy it, so that's good. Didn't need any actual dedicated anti-air stuff, as it turns out. Now it's just a whole load of enemy infantry out there somewhere controlling the map. If they want to end this, they're going to have to come and attack me, and that's going to go badly for them because they have to run right into a flame turret to get to my surviving units and try to end the battle, and the flame turret just decimates unit after unit of the Republic generic infantry. I'm also sending out this one guy to go investigate the map, not only to find out where the rest of the enemy are, but to sneakily retake build points here and there, and just set up turrets to restrict the enemy's mobility. It does the job, with more enemy infantry running into our fresh turrets. I was sending this guy to find the communications array to reveal the map, but he encountered another group of Republic troops on the way and was quickly killed. But those troops aren't going to be enough to take our base now that we've got all these turrets set up, and indeed the Republic quickly retreat once they see the turrets at the base entrance. Good work from the AI actually bothering to retreat, and good work from our troops. We've just about held out. I think we lost all of our actual army, we just had some generic garrison infantry left at the end. But I'm pretty sure the Republic lost almost all of their army as well, so that's going to be a victory for us. I'm sure we killed more value on their side than what we lost, and it's easier for us to reinforce. There's still the space fleet to contend with, but I suppose that will be a problem for next time.